So Drew Bennett is here with us. He's one of our Onshape people. And one of the reasons I wanted him to come in is there are a lot of questions that always get asked about, what's the education plan? What's the enterprise plan? I thought, what a better thing to do than have somebody from Onshape come in.
My name's Drew Bennett. I work on the PTC education team, focused specifically on Onshape. So a little bit about myself. Went to the University of Maine, graduated in 2021, and then went full time at PTC on the education team. My role here as an education solutions engineer is a lot of education partnership support. You heard me talking about things like Science Olympiad, also includes FIRST, VEX, PLTW, all of that are things that I do a lot of work with. Also do tech support. If you submit support tickets, there's a chance it comes to me and I will be the one that takes care of it. Also do content and curriculum development. So again, if you're familiar with our curriculum in the Learning Center or a bunch of our different Learning Center courses, there's a chance that I also worked on those. My actual experience with Onshape, I am a certified Onshape professional and was actually tasked with rewriting the associate exam over the summer recently. So familiar with that. That was some of my most recent work. I got about just over 3,000 hours of Onshape modeling experience. So I've been using it a lot for multiple years now. And I've been doing different STEM activities for over 10 years, largely FIRST and VEX. That's my stomping ground. That's who I am and a little bit of my background. And of course, I was brought in because there are questions about, what does Onshape offer for education plans? It used to just be 2 plans. As of last December, it is now 3 different plans. So just a quick rundown of those. It used to just be Onshape, the education standard plan is now called the student plan. And so that is ideal for students or students that are going to be working on small teams on like a small project, maybe something as small as like a little capstone or class group that is, they're not mandated to use Onshape. They can use whatever CAD they want. They choose Onshape. They sign up as a student plan. There you go. The educator plan was the new plan we added. That is our sort of intermediate offering, also free. That's ideal for individual teachers that just want to be using Onshape in the classroom, but are not part of a larger institution that is using Onshape widely across it. So educator plan is super easy to get going and it adds a couple features. I do have a slide comparing the differences. Then there is the education enterprise plan that is our top offering. Normally that is a paid plan that you can use, institution wide. It is free for PLTW schools. That is a partnership that we have with PLTW. You just need to reach out to us. There's a couple different ways you can do that. If you need to contact through me, that's fine. I can get you in touch with the right people, but that is something we offer. And that does offer further features. A lot of it is more around the administrative side than the true, CAD or CAD adjacent features side. Our offerings, here is a checklist just to sort of break it down and not. So student plan, it's what you're used to. You get the full CAD modeling, no features are hidden in any of these when it comes to like actually making parts and assemblies and drawings. You get the full suite. Assembly, same thing, drawing, same thing. There's no hidden features there. The data management that you're used to, sharing, link sharing, copying documents, that's all the same. Collaboration is also the same of, you got live collaboration, you can work on the same stuff. Where it becomes different is on the educator plan and the enterprise plan. That's where you get the classes and assignments feature set, which next slide, that's what I'll go into a little bit about like what that is and why you should use it, how to use it. So class and assignments is added for educator plan and enterprise. You also do get simulation. So that is our like our static solver. So if you want to do, in your assembly, you want to apply, set some parts to be fixed and then apply like a torque, some forces, some pressures. You want to do some simple sort of like on the fly checks of how much is my aluminum beam going to bend when I put weight on the end of it. You do get those simulation features if you are on the educator plan or enterprise plan. Clarification on that. If you as the teacher are on the educator plan, you obviously get simulation. Any students you add will also get simulation as well. Even though they may have signed up for the student plan, the second they are added to your classroom and you are an educator or on the education enterprise, they will also get simulation. So that's important to know. It's in the assemblies. The major differences to the enterprise as of right now, we are working on reevaluating this and, seeing what else we should add to the education enterprise. Right now, you do get a private domain. So instead of going to cad.onshape.com, you go to bu.onshape.com or uofwisconsin.onshape.com or whatever, your private domain is, you get that. So it's your own dedicated sandbox. Your documents are separate between the two, though. If you currently use cad.onshape.com, when you log into the enterprise, you will see nothing. You can transfer between the two, but they're two unique entities. You do get single sign on. This is great for schools that have issues with like email filtering or just like generally having students manage their passwords. You can use, Google SSO, Microsoft Azure, ClassLink. It makes it easier to get into and out of the product. You also do get analytics and bulk user management. So it's much easier to both add and remove users, as well as actually analyze what your students have been doing. You can do some pretty in-depth breakdowns of like who was working on what, when. For any Onshape document, you can see like a literal pie chart that shows you what proportion of the work or time spent in the document was done by each person. So a little bit hand wavy, but those are the major differences between the two. Between the three, sorry. So the actual classes and assignments feature set, there were some questions about this and why you would use this. How does this work with an LMS? What's going on here? So classes and assignments was really created to just make it easier to do the document management side of, I've created a document that I want my students to start with. How do I get that to all of them? And then how do they get it back to me at the end? So like, I know I've got all of it. Classes and assignments was created to address that. So what is it? It's a feature of the Educator and Enterprise plan that allows you to create class sections, add students and other teachers, TAs. So, you can add students as students, you can add TAs or fellow teachers as educators, gives you different levels of permissions. It also does do the document access for you. TAs get access to all of the documents so they can grade with you. Students only have access to their own documents, as you'd expect. You can assign work using a nice simplified interface, makes it pretty easy to, zip it out to everybody. Also allows you to receive the work in an organized location. When you click on an assignment, all of the work will show up there. You can also provide text-based feedback to students as needed. So, you say, you should go back and redo this section, or I'm not going to grade this until XYZ has been done. So what it is not is it is not something that interfaces with outside LMS offerings such as Canvas, Blackboard, any of those. You can obviously grab URLs to put into Google Classroom or Blackboard, but it is not meant to replace your LMS. It is meant to be an additional tool to that. We as a CAD company, getting into like gradebook management and things like that is well outside of our area of expertise, but we did want to make a feature set that at least makes it easier to do, the most basic of classroom style functions, grading, rostering, things like that. You need an outside service for that, but this makes it easy in the product to manage some of this stuff. I hope all of you are familiar with the Onshape Learning Center. If you want to learn more about, using classes and assignments and like how can I actually implement this in my class, I can try and show you now, but the best resource for it that is super detailed is in the Learning Center, is Teaching a Class in Onshape. It is a self-paced course that walks through everything in great detail, great videos, walkthroughs, step by step. Highly recommend checking that out. If you're interested in your own education enterprise, you're going to take advantage of that offer through PLTW, and you want to learn more of the ins and outs, see what's different, make the most of it. The Introduction to Education Enterprise is another self-paced course that is in the Onshape Learning Center at learn.onshape.com. If you go through both of those, honestly, you will be in great shape.
Here's kind of the structure tonight. I'm Brian Bobbitt. I'm kind of, I guess you could call me the lead tonight. We also have Austin Williams in here. For those of you that don't know him, he's the famous one that did 100 days of Onshape, and he also came back and did 100 days of Fusion. We just want you to be comfortable in the classroom. We want you to have success. We know that if you're excited about what you're doing, our kids are going to be excited. That's at the end of the day, that's what we're all about. We are not sponsored by anybody or anything like that. There's a little bit about me, but I also wanted to introduce you to Austin as well.
I can come off mic. Just break up the chat a little bit. Yeah, so I think Brian absolutely nails it on the head. The intention idea is to give you a tool that's going to work well for your vision and your spot. If you're overly frustrated with one solution, I'm willing to bet there's something that works well for you. And for me, for a little while there, Onshape was the answer, and really enjoyed the product of using it, and it was great. So I just want to be a secondary support to Brian. I'm going to keep a close eye on the chat and let him kind of take the reins. We do have some gifts for you at the end. So I do have some gifts for you at the end. But if you want to touch base, absolutely. You got my email right there, and I'll keep a close eye on it. If there's anything you want to work on, could be a collaboration project with some students or just giving some insight. Usually, when people get a hold of my email, they send me a screenshot and say, "Hey, why doesn't this work?" And I'll do a quick 30-second screen recording. Here's how you use this button, and then I'll send you back on your merry way.
This is kind of where we thought we would drive tonight, just on our agenda. So we definitely wanted to introduce you to Drew, and I'm very, very pleased that we could get an Onshape rep here. So I know there's questions they can answer that Austin and I we can't touch because we don't know. So it's very good to have Drew. He did make mention that they have some training suites, training classes on their website. I got to tell you, I've looked through a few of those, and they're really, really well done. Throughout this presentation, we have put together some video playlists, and we try to support everything we do with videos. Here's my Onshape playlist. I know a lot of you have seen that or have used bits and pieces of it. It's still kind of in its infancy. Your guy really with Onshape is Austin. Here's some of the basics. We wanted to show you the interface, create some basic shapes, talk about maybe some shortcuts that could help you out. Anytime you see a picture with the play button in it, there's video support, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take you into Onshape. So when you get there, it depends on how long you've been with Onshape, but your screen could look very empty depending on, how long you've been with it and what kind of projects you've done. But this is kind of your home screen. You're going to see all the files you've got, and you're going to see any folders that you've created. Right now, this is one of the education plans. So I'm going to go into create and I'm going to say document. When I do that, it's going to ask me to give it a name. So I'm just going to say sample document, and we'll click create or press enter. So here's kind of the drawing area. It's pretty standard CAD stuff. You got your front, you got a top, you got a right side plane. Over on the left side, many of us are familiar with calling this like a kind of the browser, the model bar area, the part area, however you want to put that. To get started, I'm going to click sketch up here, and then I'm going to click the plane that I want to draw in. You really, as teachers, you really want to convince your kids, hey, let's start with the front plane, right? Because anytime we go into multi-views on them, we really pound home that front view thing. So I'll click on it. Now, you're used to probably when you click on that it kind of squares it up and turns it for you. But if you press in, that will normalize it, and that does square it up. Nice thing I love about Onshape, you can hold your right mouse button down and you are in rotate mode. Really, really nice. You got the view cube up here as well. So you can say, I want to just look at that front side, or I want to rotate it and I want to look at the right. You have complete control of that. And if you want to square up again, you can always use the view cube, but then you can also just pick the plane and press in. All right. So the first thing I always do with my kids is I start them simple. I'm like, hey, let's just make a cylinder. Okay. So I'm going to start. Here's a circle up at the top in my sketch area. I'll click that circle. I like to tell my kids, hey, let's start in the origin when we can. We want to pick up a good habit. So I'll click there. For now, I'm not even going to use sizing. I'm just going to draw. I'm going to click the green check mark for finish sketch. And then the menu at the top changes. Now we're into more of a 3D mode, kind of that features area we're used to. So we're going to click E, or excuse me, Shift E would get us the shortcut for extrude, or I can just click the icon. So here's extrude. And Onshape's pretty intuitive. Normally it will pick the shape you've got. And then you can drag the arrow if you want, put it in whatever area. I don't know if you noticed that, but as I did that, this dimension changed. Kind of keep your eye on that. As I drag this arrow, you can see it adjust. So if we wanted to be really specific, right, we can say, all right, kids, let's make that 5 inches. We can press check mark or press enter. right, so now I'm going to create another one. I'll click sketch again. I like to use that front plane. And then to get it squared up, I can either use the view cube over here, or I can use the N key for normalize. What I'm going to do is just take a rectangle now. Here's that rectangle shape. Draw a rectangle. I want to kind of sneak in some sizes now. After I draw the shape, you notice that right up here, there's a number. And then also right over here, there's a number. If I press and just start typing, so I'm going to say, make that 5. And if I press enter, it'll take me over to the other side. You can say, you know what, make it 3. So continue, I could hit the green check mark and it's going to change this menu at the top, right? Or the shortcut to extrude, Shift E. And then go straight into extrude. Now to rotate, what I'm doing is I'm holding my right mouse button down. And I'm just dragging this thing wherever I want it to be. Okay. Let's hit that check mark one more time. I'm going to do one more here for us. Now I'll click sketch again. So you notice we're starting to get into a routine, right? It's sketch, click the plane, and then normalize it. So there's sketch, click that front plane, in for normal, or click the view cube, however you want to do it. Now I usually take my kids and say, let's take it and use this line tool. Clicked on the line tool up here. It's like L for a shortcut would get you there too. And I'm just going to draw some lines. Something like that. At this point, I'm probably going to have a conversation with them about, all right, hey, let's do this. Let's make sure we close the shape off. Right now, that's just a bunch of lines, right? So I want to make sure that I close it. And I also want to make sure I don't go overlapping lines. That just confuses things. So don't do that. Those are the 2 rules you got to follow. So here, I'll say Shift E. I want to go into extrude. Now right here, I can make it however thick I want to make it. Now I'm going to click this green check mark again or press enter. So I've got some basic pieces. Let's take this rectangle here and let's put some holes in it. Let's go Swiss cheese up on it. So I'm going to say sketch. I'm just going to click any side of the rectangle. So I'll start here. And I'll press N to normal it. And then I'm just going to take my circle tool and I'm going to draw some random circles. And I'll say Shift E. And you notice it picked them all. I'm going to kind of rotate it to see it. It popped them all out, which is normal. But if I wanted to, I could come over here and say, I want to remove those. So I click remove, and now they go the other way. And I just drag that arrow, check mark, rotate it. I can do the same thing. So I'm going to pick a different side now. So sketch. You notice that pattern, it's consistent, right? Sketch, like the plane I want to draw on. I like to square things up. So instead of pressing in, I'm going to press the top now. It's the same effect, right? I'll get some more circles. And then Shift E to go into extrude. It picked them for me again. I'm going to say, you know what? I need you to remove those. I'll just drag the arrow all the way through. That's kind of the basics. We just did some basic geometry, right? We did circles, squares. We started using that line tool. My gosh, there's so much more, but we can't get to all of the stuff we want to get to in one night. So that's some basic parts. Now, what I want to do, though, I think I'm going to create a revolution before we move on. I'll click sketch, and I'm going to click a plane, press N. So that routine has stayed consistent. And those are the things, any kind of CAD platform I'm teaching, I want to be consistent. Here's a revolution. I'm going to draw a straight up and down line. Come over here, and I'm just going to kind of hot dog here. I have no idea what this is going to turn out to be. Something like that. I'll click the check mark. Now, the menu at the top, it's already in features mode. What I'm going to do is choose the revolve. Okay, so when we look in here, here's extrude. That's where we've been a lot. Right next door is revolve. So I'm going to click revolve and it says, all right, what face? So I'll click this shape here. And then you notice revolve axis lights up red. So I'm going to click it and I'm going to click that straight up and down line I started with. Just created a revolution. And your kids are going to get mesmerized by those really quick. One thing I want to try before I move on here, what would be cool is for the kids to hollow that out. So up here at the top, there's a shell command. And they can click this and they can say, you know what, I want it to be a quarter-inch thick. So they can change those numbers and it'll shell that out. It'll hollow it out right for them. Just neat stuff for them to play around with. And that I think is one of the bigger pieces of any kind of CAD platform. You got to get the kids excited. You got to get them jazzed up, right?
Brian, did that shell it all the way through the bottom?
It sure did. It hollowed the entire thing out. So let me replay that. I'm going to right click and see, notice over here, I can right click on any of those things. Like the shell is the last thing I did. And I can say edit. And it'll allow me to edit that. And that's handy, right? Because if I get going too deep in this and I made a mistake back on like step one, you know what your kids are going to do? They're going to delete the thing and start over. That's no good. That's no good. So I right clicked and I've edited. I could say, let's make this 0.01. So it's going to be really thin here. But when I do that, you can see it shells it. It hollows it out all the way down to the bottom.
All right, thank you.
On
Yeah,
that, Brian, to follow up on his question though,
sure.
since you shelled all the way to the bottom, if you wanted it to continue to go all the way through the base, do you just like you do in the Autodesk software, click on the top surface, click on the bottom, then tell it shell,
Well,
and
let's
it
check it out. There's shell. Let's click that face. And then let's click the bottom face.
yeah,
Yeah. And that
there
will
you go.
completely go
Yep,
through the whole thing.
yep.
One of the great things I love about Onshape is the sharing capability. So let's hammer down on the sharing and the collaboration piece here.
Okay.
It's a pretty big deal. So I'm going to go back out to Onshape now, and I'm going to create a new one here, okay? First off, you see I'm still in classes over here. See how that's blue? I just want to go back to owned by me. That's going to show you everything I've ever done. I'm in this, I'm going to say create, and I'm just going to do a document. And for this, I'm going to call it my first share. Notice these little down arrows. See what I'm talking about with these things right here? That tells you there's more options available. So anytime you see that, if you click it, you're going to get more options. We're all very used to this 2-point rectangle. There's a center point rectangle as well. Notice on each one of these, it has letters. These are shortcuts to them. And then so I'm going to use a center point rectangle, start on the origin, and just draw. Remember, after I click, I can actually input sizes. So I say, you know what, make that 4, make that 4. And then I'm going to extrude. So I can either finish the sketch, I can press Shift and E, get me there too. And I think, you know what, let's just make it a complete cube. So on the depth, I'm going to say 4. So now when I rotate that, I got a perfect cube. All right, so what I want to do now, though, is I want to share this out. So up in the top right corner, there's a little blue button up here that says share. We're going to access that. Click share. And there's multiple ways to share. If we're all in a group, we probably would just type each other's emails in there, right? So like if it was just, a typical group size, 3 to 4 to 5 kids, I'm just gonna say, hey, y'all type your email in here. And then I can come over here and I can say, here are their permissions. So you can either edit it or you can view it. And it depends, right? It depends on what kind of access I want to give up. Then there's classrooms because I have a classroom, I have that educator plan. Then there's public. I'm not so sure about because what that does is anybody that's an Onshape user could essentially access it. And there's application where there are different apps. Like one of the big bonuses of Onshape is they've got a pretty easy way to integrate all the Vex V5 parts. right? And if your project lead the way, you already know that. So I can turn on the link sharing and then I get a link right here. Okay, and I can copy that link. There's also one here where you see down here it says share with Onshape support. Occasionally, if you're just having some issues with a file, you can actually click that and send it off to support, and they can access the file then, and that you can actually get some help with that piece. The sharing page, if you look at this, it's very, very familiar to Google. So as far as the teaching goes, there's not a whole lot to it because your kids are used to this kind of interface. A lot of you indicated you wanted to do something with like some basic assemblies. I thought maybe we should spend some time with some simple assemblies. One of the big pieces of Project Lead the Way is they do a great unit about appearance, and it's not so much about the appearance as much as it is physical properties, right? Those of you familiar with it know that you can assign certain materials, it gives them mass, density, volumes, right? And then the other side of things, one of the activities is to actually create your own material. First, I think we kind of need to know how to access that. So what I can do over here in the part browser, where it says part one, I can right click on that. First, I can rename it. And then I can go to properties and I can assign material and I can edit appearance. These are really the four big ones. And if you'll notice, they're right there at the top too, right? Also, I want to call out export. We do a lot of 3D printing. If I click export, that's going to pull up and it's going to say, all right, well, what format do you want? Step files? Do you want SolidWorks? Do you want 3MF? Do you want STL? So there's that 3MF and STL and OBJ. All of those are 3D printing formats. And the GLTF, that's actually pretty cool stuff as well when you get into augmented reality. If I right click over here on part one and I say, you know what, let's get some properties. So I can kind of pull up here. I can see, I would highly recommend having your kids fill out a lot of this stuff. One of the questions in any kind of thing you teach is the academic integrity. And if you haven't filled this stuff out, that does go a long way. I'll show you in another minute how to catch cheaters even easier. But let's right click here again and we'll say assign material. So now you've got several materials. This is the Onshape library, but you can go here and you can see, holy smokes, there's ABS, there's ABS M30. These are just the A's so far, y'all. They have lots and lots of materials. So I'm going to just pick one. Maybe here's gold. Let's go with it. So I'm assigning that material and look what it does for me. It tells me the density, tells me the modulus. And so that EMOD, for those of you that do a POE, that's kind of a big deal, right? There's your tensile strength and stuff. Then you can even go to custom. And look at that. You can actually make your own stuff up too, which is handy because as some of you know, that's part of IED. They have to make their own material. Then you can say edit appearance. So you know what? Let's make it orange. Nope, let's make it purple. Then you can even go to the mixer and make your own colors. That, you're like, well, what's the big deal? Who cares what color it is? It does become a bigger deal when you start doing assemblies that have multiple parts. It keeps kids a little more organized. This is a little bit of a diagram to all this stuff over here on the left side and what it actually is. So like versions in history and the comments and everything else. So let's look at that in Onshape. So what I'm talking about is this area right over here. So we're in this area. These things do a lot, right? So check it out. I can go here to the very top and it tells me versions and history. This is kind of like Google Docs as well in the fact that it tells me every change that was made in the document. I can even click right here where it says start. And do you see where it starts? You see all those sketch planes that are up there? If I see those, I know that this kid created this part. Right? If I see something else when I click start, that means they started from something they were given. And that doesn't necessarily mean they were cheating because maybe you gave them a part to start with, right? Maybe you did. So if you are concerned about that, you can go up here to version history, click on it, and just kind of click start. Now, this doesn't have a very long part history because it was just created about 10 minutes ago. The comments are there, so any comments that were made throughout are there. My big thing as far as an educator is I'm at versions in history a lot. And occasionally I'll check in on comments. I tell you, that's one nice way to grade. One of the things we always try to do as educators is convince the kids, hey, we should be able to give constructive feedback to each other, right? And we've got comments right there, and we've got witness to what they said. And it's not that we're going to call them out on it, but we can give them feedback and be like, hey, your comment was actually really good because now your teammates know what they can change. Or we can say, hey, your comment was kind of, it was a little rough. Maybe you could tone it down a notch. To get back there, you notice at the top it says versions are on. So I can just click return to main and it'll get me back to normal. What I'd like to do is move on to mates of movement. This right here is a very common assembly. In fact, I actually did this with my kids in IED today. We made this, and then I said, all right, I want you to be able to put these together. I want you to use a rigid and a revolute constraint. I don't care how you use them. I just want to know that you can use them. If you click on the picture, click on that, you actually get a link to this. You have a link to this file. You have a link to the files that are on the next couple of pages. So if you want to use this in class, you sure could. So if you click that and then click the link, I'm pretty positive it'll ask you to create a copy, which is good. That's what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and open it and I'll show you what I would have the kids do with it. Just to get the kids used to the assembly structure, what I'm going to do, here's a part studio and I've created all of these parts. They're actually separate parts. You notice over here on the part browser here, there is one part here. There is another part here, another part here. So these are all separate components or parts, however you want to look at it. Okay. I'm going to say we're going to take these to the assembly tab now. So the assembly tab is down here. Right? Currently, we're in the part studio. So I'm actually going to click assembly one. Oh my gosh, they all went away. But let me go back to the part studio. I want you to keep your eyes right up here. This is going to completely change here when I click that assembly tab. So I'm going to click assembly. Oh my gosh, look at what happened. It changed just like I said it was going to change. It changed quite a bit. So I'm going to click insert here. And I'm going to say, give me all of the parts. I could pull them up one by one. So I can say, just give me the arch block or give me the cube. I'm going to say, you know what, give me the whole thing. So click it. There they are. I can plop it anywhere I want to on the screen. Right? That's a big piece of the assembly puzzle. But now I'm going to learn about what these different joints do. Right up here, we got fastened. So that's kind of like we're going to hot glue two things together. Revolute's going to give us the spin. Slider is going to give us slide. And then you've got a planer. I always liken that to an air hockey table. Puck sliding around on the table. Then we've got cylindrical, which is similar to a bolt and a nut. Then there's pin slot, and then there's the ball joint. There's some other stuff like parallel mate. Now we'll see the tangent mate. That's going to come in pretty handy for you people. Fastened. And click fasten. I'm going to say, you know what? Let's take this cylinder. Let's fasten it to here. Oh my gosh. It went in upside down. This is going to blow your kids' minds. Okay. But right over here, there's an arrow that will flip it. When you get it where you want, hit your green check mark. Okay. Now I'm going to take, let's take this cube here. So I don't need to keep zooming in and out on you. I'm going to take that. I'm going to use the revolute. So I used the fastened, which is like hot gluing it. Now I'm going to use revolute. I'm going to click the mating point. I kind of just want that middle one, but you see I can click the edges too, right? I can even make like an angled edge if I want. I'll click right there and I say, you know what? I want you to go up here. Rascals went it upside down. So I'll click the flip button. And the revolute looks good. We hit that check mark here. Exit over here too. I think if I just hit this green check mark, it all goes. We have to have one piece that doesn't move, don't we? A lot of us are used to it being called grounded. Onshape uses the word fix. Same concept. So here's that arch block. This is kind of my base. So I'm going to right click on the arch block and I'm going to say fix. That's going to kind of do that. Now, when I grab this, this rascal is going to spin like it's supposed to. So we have to make sure, just like in any assembly, that we would ground or we would fix that component that we want to not move. Now I could do other things too. I mean, I can put the sliders in. There's slider right here. Let's know how I'm quite gonna do this, but we'll make it happen. So I'll click maybe there, and how about right there? And it went out or went into things, so I'm gonna flip it. We're on sliders, so let's see how this does. I grab that. I just made Newton roll over right there, right? I just made two objects occupy the same space, and they cannot do that. But what I could do is I could go back in here and draw a box. Check this little move out. I'm going to take this piece. Now I'll go back into the part studio here. And for that, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to sketch on it. I might have to normalize that. And I think what I'll do is I'll just draw a box in here. It would help if I actually knew the sizes, what I drew, but can't remember those off the top of my head, but here we go. So I'm going to remove. And let's slide that all the way through there. And check mark. So what I've done is put a hole through there. Now I'm going to go back into the assembly. And you notice it's updated now. So now I'm going to slide. Oh my gosh, would you look at that? It's almost like I almost knew that. In the presentation for tonight, I left you those blocks. And I use the blocks a lot just to play. These are the mates, and this is what they can do. But then I also show them some other stuff. Right? And you have access to this too. If you click the picture, and then that link will show up for you, and you'll have access. You can make a copy of that as well. And then I also give them this one too, just a simple little linkage. Right. Now here's why I gave you these though. One of the best ways to learn Onshape is to open up what somebody else has done and just study it. Like, what did they do? So I open this up and I grab this cube and it moves. It slides back and forth and it doesn't even go through the walls. It like does what it's supposed to. Okay, so I can look over here at the different mate features and I can see what they did. I mean, I'm not clicking anything. I'm just highlighting things. And I can kind of see their history of well, how did they put this together? Right? We can take a look at this other one too, this linkage. So this piece, again, just click the picture and then you'll get the link to it. But this is a nice one to show them some revolutes. I can take this, zoom out a little bit so you can see it better. So we can even establish limits here too. All right, now it won't go up past that. Let me show you why. See this blue? That if it goes up any further, it's going to make contact, right? So we can put limits on anything. And to do that, we'll go over here and we'll look and say, all right, here's a revolute. Let's right click on it. And let's just say edit. What did they do? Right? So if I look at that and highlight limits, there's no limits on that one. But I can rotate it around and I'll bet you I can find limits on something. Take a look at it. There you go. So on this particular revolute, just right up in here, see how it's kind of highlighted? It tells me it's got a revolute of 60 or negative 60 degrees to 240 degrees. That must mean that if it gets outside of that range, it can't go anymore. But I'm playing because I'm looking through what they've done. This tells me a lot about how they handled it. Now this is on the assembly part, but if I want to look, hey, how'd they do the parts? I can go right here to Part Studio. And there's my Part Studio. So I can see all of the different parts they've made. I can be like, you know what? They made this wrong. So I'm going to click on it and it looks like it's right there. That's the thickness because that's the extrusion. But if I want to edit the sketch, I can right click on that preceding sketch and say edit. There it pulls up the sketch for me. So I can make the changes there on that. And the nice thing about those is because they were given to you, if the kid or you, in my case, if it were me, if I mess it up, I can just go re-download that part and re-download the whole thing and kind of play around a little bit. And that's one of the biggest things of learning about CAD. You know, is you're gonna have to click on stuff and see what it does. And trust me, your kids, they're not gonna have a problem with that. They do pretty good at clicking things. Then I wanted to show you some gifts that Austin and I kind of put together for you, okay? I know that this is a project that comes up quite a bit, the automata, especially if you're an IED teacher. But again, if you click the picture, go to the link, take you straight to that part so you can go in there and see how we did all those things. Also, I gave you, for some of you have a laser cutter, you can click on this. I personally have a Glowforge. So with this, you can upload a PDF and the Glowforge, you can set it up to cut it right away. So if you click on that, you'll get the PDF of the box that we use. It's not exactly the same, but when we cut them all out, they're exactly the same, right? And I can show them some of the finger joints and all that kind of stuff. Right? And then also, Austin has left you a couple of nice surprises too. Austin, you want to chat about those or go through any of those?
Sure. Yeah. So, Christmas is around the corner, and I've looked at these like 3D printed Christmas tree ornaments, and I wanted to learn how to make it. And so, using some like medium level commands, we're able to make this really intricate, cool geometry that is, I would call this something 3D printer worthy, right? A lot of the things that students are making, again, they want to 3D print stuff that is just not, doesn't have a high sizzle factor to it. And this, I think, really does. So one of them is using this Christmas ornament, using some tools that you maybe won't often find yourself using. And so the main basis for a lot of my content is I want to showcase some feature that I haven't before. This is not a how to make this thing video. It's a how are we going to make this thing using a new tool. And that one uses the intersect tool a lot in a way to create some interesting geometry. And then the other one is a pretty common project, the puzzle cube. What I do in my classroom is the students create the puzzle cube using some Boolean operations, using some combine tools. So they create all 27 cubes using some repeat patterns, use some Boolean operations to combine those into some shapes. We then can extend that into exploded views, drawing files and parts. We then have the students then export those PDFs to a partner, and then they have to go recreate their partner's puzzle cube using that drawing file. It is, both of those are about 10-minute videos. And so the idea is both of these can be done in a single class period. That's really my goal, is that if I create any content, I don't want it to be super long. I want it to be usable, I want to be quick, and about as educational packed as that can possibly be. We not only want to create stuff, but we also like to keep stuff organized. So I'm going to, the best I can with this space, because I do have what I've got going on here. You've got recently opened spaces. So if you lose a document, recently opened is going to get you there. Created by me, shared with me. These are some easy tabs to use on. But under this create tab, you can also create folders. So if you want to be, I would say, as effective and as, I would say, organized as you possibly can be, I would start creating folders out the gate. And that's really going to help you to navigate your spaces much more quickly. Knowing what I know now, absolutely, that's what I would have done. But my workspace is rather ugly, and that's just because I didn't know it until I got into my sleeves rolled up and getting into it. I do have some of those gifts to you, but there is also a link to my soon to be or at some point going to be 100 days of Onshape videos. There is a Google site out there where I've got some of the stuff, but that Google site couldn't handle all of these links and screenshots and things like that. So there are quite a few videos. I will put a small caveat in there. This is pretty much a digital journal, me learning this software in a similar spot a lot of you guys are at. So my approaches may not be the most effective. And also, Onshape, totally allowed, has updated their software. So some of these are no longer considered, I would be say, the best practice.
We had a great question in the chat. And Drew, I don't know if you're still with us or not. One of the questions is about Onshape certifications for high school students.
There are state certifications that are usually tied to some sort of Perkins funding for those things. Now, I will say some states do have a misinformation about cost and which test to actually take and which one's considered that entry level. So I'm giving Drew kind of a moment to prepare if he's got anything. But I think we're going to look at maybe what cost looks like and the different levels of certification and maybe even what the exam format looks like.
So, of course, there are Onshape certifications. There's the Onshape Associate certification and the Onshape Professional certification. As you probably suspect, the Associate is the one that is most appropriate for students to take. And it is recognized, I believe, in about 15 to 20 states right now. The map is pretty scattered because every state has their own requirements. Some states don't even have a list, where others, it's a minimum year-long process to get on the list. So we're constantly working to get onto, more states. I know there's a bunch we're actively working on right now. And a lot of times, you have to have like a almost a sponsor of sorts. A teacher has to champion the cause for an industry recognized credential like this to be CTE, certified. But for the associate exam, it's a lot of the same skills. The major thing that I've seen is, students will know how to do it because it's part modeling, multi-part modeling, assemblies. The big catches are, can they read a drawing and how quickly can they actually do this? I've seen students that have the skills, but they're not quick necessarily. So it's a 3-hour time limit to do, 14 modeling questions and about 30 multiple choice questions. Time can be, the main enemy, not so much knowledge. So, that was a long answer, mostly to say we recommend about 50 hours of modeling time. That doesn't just include like in the classroom. We highly recommend students that are interested to actually spend some time outside of the classroom, basically just honing their skills. So, every time they go and make a sketch, it's pretty quick. Every time they know, yep, now I got to make an extrude. Now I got to revolve. Now I got to add a fillet to this, add a hole to this. They're very proficient in how they're going through it and reading the drawings. So, yeah, sum that up. I know lots of high schoolers who have their associate certification, but a lot of them, are very passionate about Onshape and spend extra time outside the classroom learning and perfecting their craft.
At the end of this presentation, I would really greatly appreciate the feedback form. You can fill it out. Like I said, we're not sponsored by anybody. We told you the reason we're here at the very beginning. We want to make sure that we're providing you some actual usable resources. Hopefully you got some useful information out of tonight.